to do it to raise money. Just keep on going and going and
That's
going.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Take sponsorship.
72 hours straight.
Yeah.
All right. I don't actually have the chat open, so we're going to ask for a sound check and just assume that we're good. Do you have the chat open, Nick?
I'm opening it right now.
Okay, yeah. I could also do that, but since you're doing it, I won't.
Okay. People in the chat. Can you hear us?
Hopefully Darren didn't leave us with his mic doing the weird feedback thing when he forgets to cut off one of the sources. Is there anyone watching in the chat? That's the first question.
Well, so far there's no feedback, and I see 3 people, but a couple of those might be bots in Twitch.
Okay. So we'll assume that we are going live. So we'll just take a dramatic pause and then start going. And if nothing records, well, then 213 will be the mythical lost episode.
It's really great to invite Steve, bother him on his day to come to a no audience. I feel really bad about that.
Although, as I was just explaining to you, I literally have nothing else going on in my life right now. Today's a good day to do it. It was this or watch the rest of Mortal Kombat. So
that's
and now he's regretting not going to watch Mortal Kombat.
Let me just check YouTube, see if we have comments there. I don't know how people actually watch us. I had assumed Twitch, but okay. So I do see us being live. Okay, I can actually listen to myself now on YouTube, so we do have live sound, so we're good to go. All right, so dramatic pause. Welcome everyone to CanHammer, your source for 40K from the Great White North. This is Francois filling in for Darren, who was unfortunately called in to perform surgery, and because that's just a tiny little bit more important than our 40K podcast, we decided to let him go. Joining me tonight, as usual, my esteemed co-host, Nick is here. Hi, Nick.
Hey, crew. How's it going?
And joining us from the future, from tomorrow, all the way from New Zealand.
The man of tomorrow. Yeah.
The man of tomorrow, our friend Steve Joel, host of the 40K Game Changers, is joining us. Steve should really be an honorary CanHammer member by now because he joins us every once in a while. Steve, how's it going, my friend?
Yeah, it's going really well. I can tell you Thursday looks great. You guys are going to be really happy with Thursday. It's good so far.
Awesome. That's great.
It's just after lunchtime on Thursday here. And lunch was delicious, just so as you know.
Okay, oh, yeah. What's being served for lunch tomorrow?
Wow. Have we descended that far? we tuned in to hear what my lunch options were on Thursday.
Yeah.
We are not here to discuss Steve's lunch options.
It was a butter chicken, just so as you know, like a curry. I had a curry.
That sounds really good.
That was good. That was good.
I hope my Thursday brings that good a lunch.
I'll send some over. It'll be there by Thursday next week.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, on that note, we do have a couple of more serious topics we had planned on talking about tonight, although I suppose we could go on an hour-long tangent about butter chicken. I'm sure Nick would be all for that. We do want tonight to talk to you guys about Warhammer Plus, which just recently launched. We've had a couple of weeks of content on there now. I know I'm a subscriber, Nick is a subscriber. Steve, did you fall into the trap of giving Games Workshop even more of your hard-earned dollars?
I haven't subscribed yet. I'm going to do what I do for almost everything, which is wait till other people figure it out first. And I will subscribe. I mean, you know, I've read a lot of the negative stuff, and I'm sure we'll get to this. I will subscribe. I just haven't A, got around to it yet, and B, I just always have this thing where I like other people to figure out the foibles and the problems first, and then once it's all figured out, then I'll join in. But the content on there looks amazing.
Well, that is awesome and probably a very smart decision. Wait for some reviews before you send some money down GW's way. And on that note, our second topic will be biggest Warhammer regrets. So, maybe we'll have some connections there.
Yeah.
But before we get into the meat of the episode, we like to do a little hobby roundup, a little catch up, talk about what we've been up to in Warhammer, painting, modeling, playing. Since you are our guest, Steve, let's start with you. What have you been doing since last we spoke, and what do you have on your agenda?
Oh yeah, there's a little bit. So since last we spoke, I've completely sold all of my Tyranid army, and I've started a yeah, I know, and I've started a brand new army, which actually is not really a new army. It's going back to my first love, which is the Black Templars. The first army I ever had in 40K, and I think this is true of a lot of people. It's like I've heard so many people say it was my
yeah,
first
it was my
army.
first. Yeah, Black Templars. Yeah, it was my first army as well.
Right. So the lore is cool and the models are cool and the imagery is cool and I just love all of it. So it was my first army and I painted up, however many points, and I took them to a few tournaments and I didn't do very well, and that was not their fault, it was mine. And then for whatever reason I decided, because I maybe needed to branch out, and so I started collecting other armies, and in order to get money I sold my Black Templars. So now I'm, which we'll get to later.
How long has it been since we've spoken?
Yeah. So no, that was way back when.
Oh,
so
okay.
Now I'm back into them, right?
Okay.
So now I'm and I've started a Primaris force, and so a buddy of mine had started building a Primaris White Scars army, and he hadn't painted very many of them. So I said to him, "Look, you're not using those. Stick with your AdMech." So shout out to my friend Aaron Wilson, who's a good friend and a good player, and he's my most common opponent. So he sold me his army, and I got rid of my Tyranids. And I'd painted them, I think, quite well, so I got some reasonable money for those. And went out and bought a bunch of other stuff. So then I was able to stock up on paints and supplies. And then New Zealand went into a lockdown, like a really super hard lockdown, like we weren't allowed to go anywhere. And so I'm glad I did stock up on paints and supplies, because it's given me stuff to do.
Starting new projects is always fun. As someone who has too many armies, really, and who likes to start projects all the time, there's something really fun and exciting about going with a brand new paint scheme, a new army. It's like a fresh blank page, and you can do whatever you want with it. So
I'm an idiot though, so I always do this thing where I go, I've got this block where I don't want just my army to look like the other armies. Like, so if I'm taking Black Templar, I don't just want it to look like all the other Black Templar armies. So I'm painting my Templars red. But it's basically the Flesh Tearers scheme. I've ripped off the Flesh Tearers scheme, and I found a guy who does it. There's a CanHammer guide to painting Flesh Tearers, and one of the guys on there has done the scheme, and I thought that's amazing. So I've taken the red from that, put Black Templar shoulder pads on it, and a different color on the helmet. And I really am loving the way it's turning out. So I've decided to call these guys the Red Dawn, because it sounds like dawn.
Yeah, that's nice.
All right. So, and I'll give them a backstory, but there are historically, or according to canon, there are references to the Crimson Templars and the Red Templars, so it's not unheard of. But I feel like red pops more on the tabletop when you're playing. And
black is so hard to achieve with like. It is without it looking flat.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even pull like tricks of doing like the satin or glossy shadows and the matte surface, but you're still just black. I mean, you can do so similarly, like I was thinking Black Templars, Iron Hands. I was actually just going to go cyberpunk with like a pink underlit and then like a sky blue kind of I don't know, overlight or whatever it's called, like so that it would be like the cyberpunk style, because I wouldn't. Painting black would just be I couldn't do it. Like you would put it on the table, you'd be like, it's just one black blob.
That's what I found the first time around with the Black Templars. Individually and in photographs, the models look cool and the color scheme is amazing. But and again, this is just my opinion, and I know a lot of people love their army in black. But for me, when you put it on the tabletop, because a lot of the buildings and the schemes that you're playing in are gray, it just seemed a bit flat. So I wanted something to pop a little. I've kept my Space Wolves, so they're blue. So now I've gone something with red, and I'm really liking the way it's turning out so far. So I'm taking my time and wanting it to be a real nice looking army.
Yeah, and you have a supplement to look forward to coming out soon, so you'll get new rules to go with your new army as well.
And a new Emperor's Champion model. Thank God. I mean,
it looks so good.
I know. They haven't announced a Grimaldus, but it would be really nice if they, would announce a new Grimaldus as well. But anyways,
I saw on Reddit and then various other Facebook posts a tease of a new Helbrecht model.
Nice.
But whether or not that's true, I don't know. It would make more sense to me if it was Grimaldus. I would love a new Grimaldus model, because that old one's kind of a bit I don't know if you guys know the word huckery.
He's
but
on like 25 millimeter base. He's like half
Right.
the height of anybody else.
That's right. You put him next to the Primaris chaplain on bike in Grimaldus, who's supposed to be this, like if you've seen the, read the Armageddon book and seen the animation, Grimaldus is this imposing, amazing character.
Cluzy arc or whatever he is. He's supposed to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you put him next to the Primaris chaplain, and he's this little guy.
Is that the towel boy? Or you bringing the Gatorade over? Thanks, kid.
Yeah.
There's some weird stuff with scale creep happening. We love new models, but sometimes they look wildly out of place. Like I've been painting Grey Knights for the past couple of weeks. I just had played my first game with the newly painted army today, and I got the new Castellan Crow. And his model, he's not supposed to be Primaris. He's just a firstborn Marine. But they upscaled him in the sculpt. So now if you put Castellan Crow next to an old Grey Knight Strike Marine, for instance, which, by the way, are not that old. It's not that old a sculpt, really. They still look decent, but he towers over them, something silly. And they did the thing that they do with all the new characters. They put him on his own tactical rock, because how else are you going to know that he's a character if he's not standing on a rock?
Got to have 1 foot up.
Exactly.
1 foot up on something.
So because of the base and the rock that he's molded on, he's actually even taller.
He's got to do his Captain Morgan pose, yeah.
So I removed the rock from mine to try and lower him down a bit so he wouldn't look so wildly out of place. He's a great looking model. It's just funny to have him like standing up next to a tiny firstborn Grey Knight or somebody really old Grey Knight sculpts. Like I don't know if you guys are familiar with, I think it's Brother Stern. But he's one of those really old, and he's fine gassed, and his face looks so bad. It looks like it's melting.
Maybe someone should do a thing of like the biggest improvement, old model to new model. Because I've got to say, Ragnar, you guys seen the old Ragnar, which is basically standing there like just this tiny little guy standing legs akimbo and kind of arms spread out and just looking straight ahead. And it's just the daggiest thing, the craziest looking thing. And the new model is so cool and so full of movement and action. He doesn't have his 1 foot up on something. He's like leaping off something. So
he's midair, really. Yeah.
He's super cool. I love it. So there should be a thing of like biggest change from old model. Even Logan, they've seen the super old metal Logan model, Logan Grimnar. Yeah. I suppose we shouldn't go straight to Santa on his sleigh because that might not be a fair comparison. But it's just the new sculpts are cool though, man. I know probably old Black Templar players will hate me saying it, but I love the Primaris models. I love the Blade Guard sculpts. They're just so cool.
Oh yeah, they're awesome. Especially the actual multi-part kit, not the ones that came with Indominus, but because you've got the one model, the guy that's wiping his sword with a piece of cloth. Like that's so dynamic. I love it.
Super cool.
So we've got one new army Black Templar, one new army Grey Knights. Nick, are you also working on the new army?
Well, Thousand Suns ish. I've always got a bunch of new armies. Thousand Suns dropped, so obviously I dropped everything I was doing to bolster my Thousand Suns. Luckily, it's not too much, but I'm like painting up some Terminators, some rubrics with flamers. So I had 2 boxes of rubrics in my closet for like over a year or 2 now. Just waiting to see if I need to build a unit with 10 flamers. And I saw them. I'm like, I don't know if I'll use them, but we're going to pull the trigger. So now I'm painting up 10 flamers and a bunch of characters. So yeah, I'm just trying to get my Thousand Suns up ready. We have a small RTT, Francois and I, this weekend. So I'm just trying to get them kind of ready at a unit or 2. But for new armies, actually, once they're done and like I'm kind of happy where I'm at with them and I can move on to another project, I've been just dying to work on those Space Wolves. And I have been flip-flopping on what Space Marines I want to do, but I still come back to the Space Wolves just because of that tension between the Thousand Suns and Space Wolves. And they're just really cool army to play. And as far as Space Marine armies go, like all the other Space Marine armies seem like fairly samey, other than Space Wolves. That seems to be...
dare you?
Yeah, they're all samey. I mean, Iron Hands, or you're playing Ultramarines, or they're all the same.
Some of them are blue, some of them are black.
Yeah, white scars. It's all literally the same thing. But Space Wolves, they bring flavor. I mean, you're a player of culture if you play Space Wolves, in my opinion. Yeah, 100%
exactly. Agree. I mean, you've got basically space Vikings riding giant wolves into battle on other planets. It doesn't get much more uniquely flavorful than that. And the only thing I would say is get used to painting bare heads, helmetless heads. You've got to have wolves, space wolf got characters with beards. So I hope you're good at painting flesh tones. Nick, it's important.
I got Reichland Flesh Shade, and I feel like that automatically makes you good at
90% of the work right there.
Yeah, exactly.
And you had me print those runic shields for you, like 6 months ago? So
the
project has been in the works for a long time.
Yeah, I had him print shields and like axes. I ordered from like Poland, like these heads. I ordered from Spellcrow, these other things. Like I got all kinds of special bits to do this. So I mean, it might as well. Otherwise, there's like hundreds of dollars in special bits. I would literally just throw in the trash. So, but yeah, no, that'd be the next project. Once I can have 1,000 Suns up and running, it shouldn't be too much longer because a lot of the collection was already really painted. But then, I can dedicate to like doing something cool. It won't live up to your Space Wolf, Steve, but hopefully I can do, our people justice, our Space Wolf people. Yeah.
Very good. And what about you, Francois? You must have you've got your Grey Knights on the go, and is that that's for the tournament would you say this weekend in RTT?
The Grey Knights are one of those silly projects that I take on because I just must have one more army because I'm a sucker for power armor. So Grey Knights came out and I was like, I'm going to paint a Grey Knights army. And over a period of like 2 weeks, I painted 2,000 points of Grey Knights.
Wow.
And I used them today for the first time. I had a game against our friend Jeremy, who plays AdMech. And I was really impressed by the raw power and efficiency of just basic power armored Grey Knights. The list that I played was 70 Grey Knights in power armor, 25 interceptors, 35 strikes, 10 purifiers. Anyway, it added up to 70 bodies in power armor, and it was just so much raw power on the table. It was really fun to play. But for my competitive army, I am still sticking to Drukhari. On my paint desk right now, I have a Court of the Archon that I'm painting up and a second Succubus. And that's what I'm taking on Sunday to our little RTT. The reason why I would take the Grey Knights because they're really fun and new, and I like new and shiny things, and they are both of that. But we have a team tournament coming up in November. Nick and I were on the CanHammer team with Chris and Jason and Will, and I'm the Dark Eldar player for that tournament, and because I would very much like to do well in that tournament, I'm going to try and get 20 or 30 more games in with Dark Eldar between now and November. So it's going to be all Dark Eldar all the time, and then maybe after November I'll move on to something else. But the Drukhari are obviously still, I think most people would agree, the best book in the game. If not, then definitely top 3. And so I feel
they're the best. They're the best.
That's what I would say, but I know that there are people who disagree. Now, other people are wrong. It is the best book in the game.
Yeah, but nobody disagrees. It's Dark. Well, I guess Dark Eldar players may disagree. You're right.
Well, yes, Skari might disagree.
Yeah.
So I'm really enjoying the Dark Eldar playstyle as well. The MSU so fast and they're
undercosted.
That exactly overpowered. That's exactly what I look for in an army.
Yeah, exactly.
And overpowered.
Isn't the codex for Dark Eldar is just like one page? You open it up, it says do whatever you want, and then you can close the book again. That's it.
That's literally it. Yeah, exactly.
And honestly, they are 10 to 15% undercosted probably, but it is what it is, and these are the tools that I have, and so I will go and crush people in competitive games for as long as I possibly can with this army. And then when Games Workshop nerfs it, inevitably I have 11 other armies on my shelf that I can pick and choose from. So.
Oh my God, really? That's amazing.
When we get into regrets, we'll talk about my hoarding tendencies. But enough. Nick and I have this RTT on Sunday. Then next week I have another RTT. Then in October we have a big 120-man tournament in Toronto we're going to. Nick and I and a bunch of people from the Ottawa area. Then we have a major here in the Ottawa region just a week before the team tournament. So really we're spoiled for competitive events. We have all these things. So that the next few months will be really great for competitive Warhammer.
That's awesome. Yeah, we got a couple of single day events coming up in the next couple of months. And the 5th of November, we've got an event in Auckland COVID notwithstanding, an event in Auckland, which is I think 50 people, 6 rounds, couple of days. So a couple of people have said, "Oh, you're going to take your Black Templars to that?" And I'm like, probably not. Partly because I don't know if I'll have all of it painted by then, but mostly because I don't want to be that guy that turns up not really knowing his codex. You know, I want to be able to take an army. If you go into a tournament, I don't want to be the pain in the neck guy across from the table who's constantly having to look up every single thing. And you know, you're learning a new thing. I'm of an age where learning new stuff is challenging. So I'll just take the Space Wolves, something I know, something I'm familiar with. I know what they do. I know how they work. It doesn't mean I'll play any better with them, but I'll play faster with them. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and on games where you're on the clock in a competitive setting, often you need to know what your army does, otherwise you will take up too much time. But also you may accidentally misplay rules just because you're not used to them, and then if you later find out that you accidentally cheated, you'll feel terrible about it, right? So I find it's best to like take a couple of weeks and get really used to the books before you take them out.
Well, I feel armies that you're more practiced with too leave space cognitively to actually play the game versus just trying to recall rules and like how things interact. Like once you have that in the bag and it's like second nature and whatever the back of your hand, then you can actually look at the game state and be like, okay, I think he's going to do this. And then I know these guys can do that, you know, whatever else. You can play that game more so versus, you know, I mean, when I first brought out the Thousand Suns, like the book came out and we had an RTT the next weekend and Franz was like, hey, you should bring him out. I was like, okay. I got dead last place because I spent so much time trying to figure out who has what spells, who does what. I was tripping over myself that I just got like blown away. Like just people just shot me off the board, no problem. I was like, oh,
So yeah. I'm sorry. I genuinely think you did think you'd do well with them.
You make silly mistakes, like you say, not even rules mistakes, but just things like if you're trying to figure out or trying to remember like what litanies a guy can do and then what other things and how far things move. And then, as you say, all of the different spells, whatever it might be. And then you move in such a way that you leave a character standing miles out in his open just because you're thinking about so many other things. I played Thousand Suns for about 5 minutes, went to a tournament. They were all new. I went to a tournament. They were painted up nice. And I kind of had all this stuff around and I left Araman just standing right out there and he got sniped. Turn one, Araman got blown up, boom, and then that was like, but everything kind of revolved around him for the list. I was like, okay, cool. I'll just go.
Well, funny you say that. So like I'd played Thousand Suns for a long time in 8th, but you know, from 8th to 9th, I played Death Guard. So we're talking like over a year of just playing Death Guard, like monofaction Death Guard. So I'm playing this tournament, and I'm like, okay, I do all this like airmen and all the characters are near the Terminators, so they're safe, blah, blah, blah. My second phase goes and I warp time or temporal surge the Terminators. I move them up and then I didn't realize I moved them all away from all my characters.
Yeah.
So then, so then I'm like, oh, well, this is going to be a problem. So then like Buddy had Demolisher tanks and just like, well, gone.
Yeah. It's just too easy to make. Not just rules mistakes, but just silly mistakes that you know better, but then you're concentrating on. You know, I have enough trouble if I'm focusing also on what my army does and not really familiar with the rules for my army. I think one of you guys was saying before that HU was Nick. It leaves your brain open if you know your army, but like the back of your hand, you can then focus on the other guy's army. Like Drukari have all these rules I'm not familiar with. You might come up against an army like Harlequins that basically break the law constantly, and you're just like, you know, you need to understand the other guy's army as well a little bit, right?
Yeah, and I think you just need the practice with that. So I can appreciate like that bit me in the butt bringing the brand new army. Like, I gotta have so much, and it was fun. It was a good learning experience. I needed the reps anyways. But yeah, I definitely would have performed, I think, a little better with the Death Guard than with the Thousand Suns. But hey, it's we're going Thousand Suns, so it's all learning. That's right. Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about regrets and mistakes, let's jump into that topic because I think, Steve, I think it was your suggestion that we talk about regrets in Warhammer, and we've been, the three of us and most of our listeners, doing this for a while. We've bought a lot of stuff, we've played a lot of games, we love the game obviously, but we all have regrets, and so let's talk about some of the things we maybe wish we'd done differently in our hobby career. And because it is Steve's idea to talk about this, I'm gonna throw you to the wolves and ask you to start first. Tell me, what is your biggest Warhammer regret, or regrets plural?
Yeah, at the moment, and the reason I brought it up was because of what I was saying before, which was the fact that I had all these Black Templars, and I sold them, and now I'm starting a Black Templar army again. And I remember having a conversation with the guy at the store in Wellington, the city I live in, and I said, I think I'm going to sell the Black Templars and just get another army. And he said, look, you'll do whatever you want to do, but my advice is don't sell them. Put them in a box, put them under your bed, put them in a cupboard, put them on a shelf, whatever. Save up, get the money to get your new army another way, but have those Black Templars because you love them, you love the lore, you love the look. You'll come back to them just because they're not your thing right now. You will come back to them. And I went, hey, I know what I'm doing, and I sold them to get money to buy the new army. And now I'm like, he's right. I kind of miss having them around. I've done all these. I've only been playing the game for like 6 or 7 years, right? But I've gone through all of these different armies and all of these different iterations. And what I've realized is I like playing Marines. I've got my Space Wolves. I want to go back to the Black Templars. And I love the lore and I did love the look. And the books, of all the books I've read, the books that feature Black Templar characters are the ones that I dig the most. So my biggest regret is selling that probably 3,000 points of Black Templar that right now when I'm trying to build a Primaris force or get into it again, boy, that would have been a really useful base to have.
Yeah.
For every single army I've had and sold, I've kept an HQ or my favorite models so that I've got a shelf of, the different armies, the different characters from the different armies. So I've still got Helbrecht and the Emperor's Champion.
Looking at you disapprovingly for selling your troops.
Yeah.
We're all our friends. Yeah.
Helbrecht isn't talking to me, but
Yeah.
But,
I think that's a very common one, though. That's probably one of the most common Warhammer regrets of selling an army and then later going, I wish I had that army.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of them I don't regret so much because I knew, for example, with Drukhari, I knew after I'd even played them a few times, this wasn't going to be my thing. Like just the play style, I really struggled with it. I'm not a good enough player to have a fragile army. I really need something a bit more robust that I can make mistakes and not just auto lose right then. So Drukhari and Tau, I had some Tau and I sold them. I don't really regret that. No offense, Tau players, but again, just not my play style. But the Black Templars, that would be my biggest regret. I think that's probably my only. I certainly. In terms of money spent or anything else, I'd probably regret a couple of paint choices, color choices, when you get halfway through an army and then you change your mind about the way you want to do it and you're like, oh, shit, now I've got to repaint all of that. And that's not okay.
How about you, Nick? Did you ever sell an army and then wish you still had it?
Yeah, I think one of them, but luckily it's for Age of Sigmar, so we don't really play that. Even if I had it now, it'd still be in a box. So, my Seraphon, or Lizardman. So when I got back in the hobby, I don't know, it was 10 years ago, I can't remember. I actually got back into fantasy, and the first army I played was Lizardman because I was in grad school, and I was telling my wife I need to do something. I need something to do after work other than just watch TV. So whatever. And of course, dinosaurs riding dinosaurs, that's immediately like, well, we're just going to have to buy that. So
the 5-year-old in you went, that's so cool.
Yeah, who incidentally is the same person the 36-year-old me is. They're like one and the same. So yeah, that is so cool. So I bought them and I played Warhammer Fantasy for whatever. Anyways, and then it was like a couple of years ago, we hadn't played Age of Sigmar. There's like no plans for the group to play Age of Sigmar. I know Francois has some armies, but like similarly, he hasn't played it in I don't know how long. So yeah,
years now.
So I sold them, bought armies, whatever else. But I mean, I feel like even though I don't play them to this day, it would still be like a nice collection to have because it'd be like, oh, that's the army that brought me back in, and just to kick me while I'm down, I think they're like the top army in Age of Sigmar right now. So even if I wanted to like just pick up and play, I could bring it, Yeah. But anyways, I don't miss them that much. But yeah, I maybe wish I could have kept them. But I think I think something I regret a little bit more sometimes, and it's not something like I'm gonna fix. I'm just like I've got no self-control. I don't know if you guys are like this. I'm the type of player that'll be like, I'll be like drafting up a list, and I'm like, oh, I'm having this list. But what if adding this would be better? Oh, I better get that now because I better, I better like secure that. But then my mind is like, maybe I can use it for this tournament. So, for example, my Thousand Suns, I was like looking them up. I was like, are 2 Contemptors too much? Maybe I need a Forge Fiend. So I messaged my guy like, hey, send me a Forge Fiend. Okay, so I pay him. But he's like, yeah, man, I think the Forge Fiend's back ordered. I was like, oh, okay. So I go to my other buddy who owns a store, and I go on his web card, and I'm like, hey, I think I need a Forge Fiend. Okay, but then I need free shipping, buy all this other stuff. So like to get one Forge Fiend, spend $500 just like between buying all this other duplicate Forge Fiends to get one here, and then finally, I'm like, am I going to use the Forge Fiend? I don't know. We'll see. So I'm like,
yeah.
I don't think I can change. That's just how I am. I'm like kind of a very impulsive, lack of any disciplined kind of person. That's just like, if I need this, I need it now. But
100%.
I mean,
no, the same.
Yeah.
The other thing I do along those lines is, I have several times done this actually, where I basically take a box of expensive models and rip them to bits so I can kit bash one guy.
Yeah.
And like I ruined some Blade Guard models because I wanted to kit bash my own company champion for my Space Wolves. So I got a couple of Terminators, a couple of Blade Guys, some other bits and pieces from other models. And I was like, you know what? I'm never going to use these. Boom, rip them apart. And then 10 minutes after the company champion is made and painted, I'm like, 4 Blade Guards not enough. I'm gonna need more Blade Guard. I have to go and buy another box of Blade Guard. So, it's just like this constant roundabout of I should have, and it's not a lesson I ever learn. Like I make the same mistake over and over again because it's the same thing because of needing it now. I want to make my company champion now. If I waited, I could maybe make better decisions, but I need it now. So I just look at what I've got and go, let me kit bash those things. And it's silly.
Yeah, I was the same way with I was the same way with the Nurgle Demon Prince for my Death Guard. I was like, oh, Death Guard has got all these new sculpts. They all look great, except that Demon Prince is such an ugly old sculpt. And I already have like 9 Demon Princes. But I was like, I need a new one. And then I've just like decided, I'm going to order a box of Castle and Robots. I'm going to kit bash it with whatever else with wigs, and I built it. And it's also a picture. It was the stupidest looking model.
Horrible.
It was the stupidest.
And not in a good Nurgle way.
No. It was the dumbest looking. I was like, I honestly can't put this on the table. And anyway, so yeah, what was like $100 some worth of models that I just destroyed, and then I didn't even end up using it. Or actually, I think I was able to recoup the other one, and I snapped off the Nurgle bits and I just shipped them to a buddy. He's like, do you want money for these? I was like, no, honestly, if you can just make use of them, I will feel better about not having wasted them.
You had defiled that model so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Defiled is such a great word.
Nick is a very talented painter, and his armies look beautiful. So I can say, without risking to offend him, that model was terrible.
It was awful. It was the dumbest looking model I've ever seen.
But the great news is that because you made that mistake, you'll never do it again.
Or will I?
Right?
I've got a couple of Forge Fiends on the way that might prove us wrong on that one.
Right. Francois, it's your turn for regrets, right?
I definitely don't regret selling an army because I don't sell anything. I'm a 40K hoarder, and actually that is a problem, and probably that is my regret. Well, I say I don't. So I sold armies, but that was in 2004 or 5 when I was moving to Boston and not playing anymore, and I did not have room in my tiny apartment in Boston for Warhammer stuff anyway. So I don't regret that. That was just life circumstances forcing the sale. Though I do sometimes think fondly of my Wood Elves from 1996 and how cool that metal Forest Dragon was. That's not really a regret, but when I have a rare moment of clarity and I walk into my furnace room in my house and I look at the shelves that I had to install in the furnace room that are filled with unbuilt or half-built models, I do think this is a bit much, ain't it?
Well,
because I have so many armies.
You said?
I have 12 armies, and that I don't think even counts the Sigmar armies. Well, they're on the shelves right here. So I have Imperial Knights, Harlequins, Eldar, Necrons, Imperial Guard, Ultramarines, Dark Angels, White Scars, Iron Hands, Drukhari, and Tyranids. So those are the armies that I own. Plus,
and
I
for
have
the people that are following along at home,
it's a lot.
those were 3 separate Space Marine armies.
Well, 4 if you count the Grey Knights.
Yeah, they're all painted differently.
I'm the kind of player who, if I put Ultramarines on the table, they gotta be blue. So I have a blue Space Marine army, I have a White Scar scheme, and I have an Iron Hand scheme, and I have an actual Dark Angels. Well, actually, I have Ravenwing and Deathwing. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I don't regret any of that. I fully embrace the lifestyle of owning 12 armies. What I do regret is that, a little bit like Nick, I tend to be very impulsive in starting new projects and going, oh, I need these units. And then I'll order like 2,000 points of stuff in one go. And I'll start assembling, painting, and each and every one of my army is in a playable state. They're at least 2,000 points painted, and they've all seen the table at least once. Although in some cases only once, but I've at least played all of my armies. But in my furnace room, I have like Christmas boxes of like the dark. I have the Craft World Eldar Christmas box that came out like 3 years ago. I was like, oh, that's a great box. I bought 2 of them. They're still on the shelf. I have guard vehicles that are on the shelf. I have random Space Marine models of any possible permutation you can think of on the shelf, because at one time I went, oh, that's a cool model. I want to paint it. I want to play it. And then by the time I got it and it shipped to me, I had moved on to a different project. So
yeah.
That is something that whenever I get a rare moment of clarity, I go, I should probably sell some of these things. But then I think as soon as I sell it, I'll need it.
You don't want that regret. Believe me, that gets us back to the beginning, right? Because as soon as you sell it, you do need it. The other thing with having that many boxes and that many armies, do you regret not being able to feed and clothe your family? That's a lot of money.
Having to sell your house. Yeah.
I once started adding up how much all this was worth, and I quickly stopped.
Yeah.
It's like, I could have paid off my mortgage.
Well, not quite, but it's there's a very nice used car's worth of models in the station.
We had, well, I mentioned earlier on, I sold my Tyranid army, right? So, and I had assembled the Tyranid army from bits and pieces of just crap that a lot of people wanted to get rid of. I originally bought some on our version of eBay for next to nothing, because someone had just found these models, didn't know what were or what to do with them. So I picked up like I don't know, 500, 600, 700 points worth of Tyranids for 180 New Zealand dollars, which is so cheap over here. And then, buying bits and pieces for next to nothing. And I assembled this and I was able to sell it. And then when I sold it, I bought my friend's army, enough to get started anyway. And then with some of the money left over, gentlemen, I bought a smartwatch.
Oh, really? Wow.
So I bought this smartwatch. I went and dropped $400 on a smartwatch from selling Tyranids. And I'm like, man, if I didn't get into Warhammer, like imagine the stuff I could have in my life. Although, does it bring me the same amount of enjoyment? No, absolutely not. But I can tell you what time anything is happening now, if anyone wants to know.
But that's the thing. As someone who plays a lot of Warhammer and spends hours and hours and hours each week painting, modeling, playing, it's worth it. It's worth every dollar I spent, because it's a lot of hours of entertainment. And to be fair, like the entirety of my guard collection more or less was used for pennies. There was a guy who's selling like 3,000 points for $500 or something like that. So it's not all retail bought for sure. But it's not that I regret the money spent. It's more that sometimes I look at all those boxes that are unbuilt, unpainted. Some of them have been there for years, and I think someone should really be getting some enjoyment out of these. And right now it's just gathering dust in my basement.
Right. Yeah.
You're like a Warhammer dragon. You're just like hoarding this pile of boxed Warhammer.
But I tell you, one day that Raid Knight that's still in the box will be good again.
I know that this isn't quite on topic, and maybe it leads actually into the next topic, but funny you talk about the value for money thing, the value for money proposition with Warhammer. And it's a conversation I've had with other people, because very often on Facebook and very often in conversation, the issue comes up of price. In New Zealand, we pay a premium. We pay much more than almost any other country. I think Australia might be on a par with us to get our
I've
models.
accidentally ended up on the New Zealand GW website and had a heart attack.
Yeah, so we pay a lot of money, but I'm a big fan of buying through the local Warhammer store if and whenever I can. I mean, if they've got the product, I'll go and get it there. For a couple of reasons. One, because they always have been amazingly helpful. I think we've talked about this before, guys, with, when I was learning the game, they gave me so much information and so much of their time. They give us tables to play on for free. We can just go and use their tables and terrain to play on for nothing. So all of that is worth something. But the other thing is, like, if I take my kids to the movies, and this will be different in every country, but in New Zealand, that's like, say goodbye to $120. By the time you get the tickets, feed them an ice cream and some popcorn and whatever, and that's for 2 hours entertainment for the family. 2 hours. If I drop $120 on a box of toys, I don't know how many hours of entertainment I get out of that by the time you've built them and painted them and then played a few games. And it's just, in terms of a value for money proposition, the amount of time you get out of each dollar spent, it's really good, Assuming
exactly.
That's why you actually build and paint and use the models.
I need to do a proper inventory, but I would guess that I have just about 40 to 50,000 points painted.
Wow.
Across all my armies. Because
yeah,
all of them are minimum 2,000 points, and some of them are like 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
No, I agree. It's like you said, between, I mean, just about my whole social life outside of a couple high school friends is Warhammer related. I talk Warhammer every day. First thing I do generally in the morning is I chat with Francois, Darren, and Chris about Warhammer, and then I read Warhammer. I just got like the Ahriman books and whatever else, right? We paint. That takes up. Spent all week painting. That's been my evening activities that I've really enjoyed. Yeah. We go to tournaments. We look forward to seeing friends. Like, I've met Steve. How would I meet other people? Like, how would I have met people from somebody from New Zealand? I can call a friend any other way. Like, I mean, possibly video games, but anyways, I do think it has a good proposition value for money. And I mean, I think that conversation is probably, it is maybe a little off topic. For some people, depending on their means, it is expensive, right?
Yeah.
But then, I mean, at that point, a lot of other hobbies would be expensive. But like, if you compare to, like, if I compare my friends that are kind of in the same, say salary range, I don't know how to say it, politically correctly or whatever, they're going out there buying motorcycles, they work on cars, or they do woodworking. You're still talking about thousands, like you said, $1,000 in equipment. Any hobby, really, in my opinion, if you're a golfer, if you do a lot of traveling, costs a lot of money. I mean, there are hobbies that, running doesn't cost an awful lot. It's just a lot harder than, painting models.
But who wants to do that?
Yeah, exactly. That's stupid. But yeah, generally hobbies tend to be expensive. And like, for example, I used to snowboard quite a bit. But like, say you go to Utah or Whistler, you buy your snowboard, you get your season pass, you travel. I mean, all of that. And then it's still like, you're talking thousands of dollars a year to snowboard for that one evening a week, or every 2 weeks, or every 3 weeks, you get to go snowboarding. Yeah. I mean, versus Warhammer, which is like, you wake up at 6, you're on the phone, like, oh yeah, did you think of this, or what happened to the tournament, or whatever nonsense going on the internet right now, and up until you go to bed, where you're like, oh, good night, Francois. Yeah, we'll talk about Thousand Suns tomorrow. Good night.
I'm rethinking my life's choices now, because everything you said is true.
It is true.
Good night, Helbrecht.
Good night.
Good night. Exactly. My wife and kids have this song that they sing, because if ever they're looking for me, if ever they're like, "Where's Dad?" He's in his office. Where do you think he is? He's in his office painting Warhammers, or admiring his dice, or this beautiful new roll dice tray and box that I've got. He's in his office building or painting, right? And so they have this thing that they sing this song, and it for me. Warhammer, I love you, Warhammer. They'll walk around the house singing that, It's
I
like
just picture you in your
I'd
house
like to
coat,
know,
just
but
like
I
dancing
didn't.
through the house, singing that song with your cup of coffee, like a Disney movie or something.
I think I just found a cold open for this episode.
At least I could do.
Yep. And actually, this segues us perfectly into our next topic, which is Warhammer Plus. Is it worth the money? And I'm a
Fair
sucker.
enough.
I buy everything. So I don't know that I'm a good judge of whether or not it actually is worth the money. But I jumped on the chance. I subscribed right away. So far, I'm happy. But I'll let you two kind of discuss it. And we'll come back to my sycophantic love of everything Games Workshop later. Nick has subscribed, so we'll start with him. Nick, why did you decide to give Games Workshop your money and subscribe to Warhammer Plus?
Well, I mean, it's like anything else. There's this kind of fictional world that exists in Warhammer that a lot of us enjoy, and it's usually in the codex. It's in the codexes in the books, and that's where it lives. But I mean, if you're like me, you love TV, you love the visual aspect, the cinematography of TV or whatever, and so it's kind of this is the first time outside of YouTube animation that there is kind of these canon stories that are being brought to life on TV. So, to me, I was just, of course, going to jump at the chance to watch that, whether they're animated like the Hammer and Bolter series, or whether they're kind of 3D animated like the Angels of Death. It's just like 100%. That's why I'm going to subscribe for it. I mean, in my opinion, you also had to approach it. You also had to tape your expectations, right? I mean, some people that were expecting kind of a Netflix library of Warhammer content. I mean, I don't think your expectations were really that reasonable. This is like a very niche, product here. So I don't know. I feel like that's why I jumped on it. And so far, every Wednesday they're putting out new content. Like new Angels of Death, and there's the painting master classes, which are actually super well produced, and there's the battle reports that incidentally are kind of like the best battle reports you can get now. Like, they're not competitive battle reports per se, but in terms of production value, it's like, well, GW wins. So that's not fair. Play on Tabletop, I think, do kind of at that quality, but they're probably got the same level production crew in the background. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I jumped on it. It's just like watching Marvel movies. I don't know, when I was a kid, I'd watch I'd read all the comics, superheroes, and I just think, oh man, I wish I could see this stuff on TV. And now, thank God, through my adult life, there's all kinds of Marvel movies, so I will watch every single one because that's what I wanted to see as a kid. And same thing, the kid in me wanted to see this stuff on TV, and I think, I don't know, I'm enjoying it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really great point though, that one of the things that people argue on is the amount of content, right? And people will say, well, how much money am I spending versus how much content there is available on the channel? And you mentioned Netflix, Disney Plus is another one, whatever the streaming service people have in their country is. But I'd really love to just call bullshit on what people are arguing, because Disney Plus is a great example. In New Zealand, when Disney Plus launched, everyone went out and got it because of one show, Mandalorian. People went and watched, and they were like, I'm happy to spend that amount of money a month for the Mandalorian, and in all of the other shit that's on there, I'm never going to watch. Now we've got all the Marvel stuff on there, and it's great, and they're slowly building up but if you look at Netflix, you pay how much money for Netflix? How many shows on that platform do you legitimately watch each week? Whereas with Warhammer Plus, there's overall less content, but you're actually a fan of all of it, right? You're a fan of the battle reports. You're a fan of, and if you just look at and I haven't subscribed yet, but as I mentioned, I am going to, just looking at the quality of the stuff that they have purchased outside of, and again, that's a whole other controversy. Let's not maybe necessarily go down that road right now, but Astartes, and the stuff that was done based on the Armageddon book, the Black Templar one.
Yeah, we were talking about Grimaldus earlier. That's exactly where that came from in my mind.
Right.
That animated series, yeah.
And I'm just, for the life of me, can't remember the name of the guy, Richard, who put it together. But this is fan work that they've done, and the quality of the work is so good. And if you look at the Astartes series, by the way, done by a New Zealander.
Oh.
And yeah, right.
Did not know.
And I didn't know that either until I was interviewing someone, and they said, "Oh, I know the guy. He's a Kiwi," and I went, "What?" He's from.
We're getting him on the show now.
He's from up the road.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've heard of Lord of the Rings. New Zealanders make movies. We do okay. But anyway, so look.
I heard every single New Zealand citizen had to be an extra in that movie. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I can tell you, personally, I know a dozen people who were extras in
I
those films.
thought I
Everybody.
saw you somewhere, Steve.
That's
Oh
right.
my!
We
Were you
all
the
got
Lich
invited.
King? Yeah.
Just as an aside, the funniest thing was when they asked for extras, you had to be very tall or very short, and that was like, I'm neither of those things, so I didn't even bother going along. But if they're very tall or very short people,
What
they
about
were
a
all-
little bit fat? Well, that. Hey.
I might have missed that casting call.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is the content is really great, and it's silly to say yes, but how much content do they have versus Netflix versus Disney versus whatever your streaming service is, because realistically, if this is so targeted, if you're we have the Sky Network over here, which provides a sports channel, a movies channel, Nickelodeon for the kids. It's like 200 channels, Discovery, and all of these. And you get a basic package of like 100 channels, plus then the ones you really want to see, the sport or the movies. You pay extra for that, right? I'm sure it works the same way for a lot of other countries. But the fact is, if I pay my $50, $60 a month, which I've stopped doing, it's for the sport. That's what I'm buying. The other 100 channels I don't care about. Whereas with this service, I'm going to want to watch all of it, the painting tutorials, the battle reports, the animations. It's targeted at me. So I don't mind paying the same as Netflix or Disney, because I'm watching all of it. So it's not a valid argument to say, yes, but there are a million movies on Netflix and only 5 on this, you know?
Yeah. In fact, the only reason I still pay for cable is to watch hockey. And so if you look at it this way, like that, because cable is expensive. So my dollar per hour watching hockey is probably higher than my dollar per hour watching Warhammer shows on Warhammer Plus. If you think of it this way, dollars per hour. So I was I paid for the entire year. What was it, Nick? Like $80 Canadian something for the year?
I don't know, something like that. Yeah.
So let's call it $8 to $10 a month. It's a little bit less than that, but let's call it that. And you get a couple of hours every week released, right? Between the battle reports, the painting tutorials, the animated shows. I know I'm going to watch all of that. So if I get a couple, let's call it 2 hours. It's a little bit more than that, but let's say 2 hours a week, 8 hours a month, you're at $1 per hour of entertainment. Right. That's cheap.
Yeah, it's good. Right? Yeah, really.
And when it comes to Warhammer Entertainment, I personally subscribe to Tabletop Tactics, which I've subscribed for years and years, and is to me the gold standard of Warhammer Entertainment. I really love those guys. And I also subscribe to Tabletop Titans. Now let's take both of these as comparable examples, because they are. It's Warhammer content you can watch on your computer, right? So Tabletop Tactics, they release 1 free video a week on YouTube, and then 2 to 3 for paid members. So I get 4 or 5 hours a week for my £5 a month, which ends up being like $8 or $9 Canadian. Great dollar per hour ratio there. Then Titans, I give them $5 American a month to be a member there, and they give me 1 battle report extra a week for that. So 3 hours a week, $5 a month. Again, we're talking about a really good ratio of dollar per hour, under $1 per hour for both of these guys. Now, Warhammer Plus is, I guess, in the same ballpark, depending on if you're going to consume all of it or only part of it. Maybe a little bit better, a little bit worse, but it's pretty much the standard. If you're paying for whatever, Tabletop Tactics, Titans, Vanguard, DeploymentZone.tv, like all of those guys that put Warhammer content online, the dollar per hour is pretty much all the same. And the Warhammer Plus, well, the production value is a lot higher than anyone doing it, you know, not as a hobby because it is their job, but than any of those other guys. They don't have quite the same resources, right? So it seems really reasonable to me, price-wise. And I don't understand the people who complain. I mean, you don't have to subscribe, right? No one's making you. You can still play Warhammer.
You get the impression that there's a lot of Warhammer fans in the backgrounds have guns to their head and that they have to buy this stuff. So they go on, you know, they go online and complain that they have to buy this, because it's like, no, you do not. You can actually go to a different hobby if you want, if you find that more entertaining.
Not even that. You can enjoy your Warhammer hobby without ever giving a penny to Warhammer Plus. There's no requirement to buy it.
But that was a good point that I hadn't thought about that you brought up, Steve. Was yeah, you're right. Like Disney when it first came out was just The Mandalorian, and I was the same way. And then like Netflix, I can literally go months without watching Netflix and having subscribed to it. Same thing with Prime or whatever other stuff I'm subscribed to. There's literally, I was subscribed to Crave. That's one of Canada's kind of like streaming services for like 6 months. And I think I'd watched the Picard series. And after that, not at all. So versus, there's only like a more limited library, but I've watched absolutely everything and it's all been valuable. Like I've been painting for years and I consider myself a decent painter. But then when I watched Louise Sugden's like kind of painting classes, I still feel like I'm getting out of those classes, despite
the one about faces that just blew my mind.
Yeah,
she's amazing. She's like
just
what she posts is just extraordinary.
We're playing checkers. She's playing 4D chess. That's what's happening. Because she painted a pink horror, but all in negative. So then when you took a photo and you did the negative of that negative, it came out as this very vibrant pink horror.
Now, that's just showing off.
I know. Like, it's like, well.
But even she posted a thing on Instagram and said, just practicing faces, still a bit to do. And I'm like, come on. There was it was incredible what she's able to do. Anyway, the point you're making is you're still learning a lot from painting tutorials.
Exactly, still learning, and binning my models because like after I'm like, well, obviously I'm not at that, so whatever, just throw all my crap in the garbage. No, so that, and then the battle reports. Funny enough, like I don't typically watch battle reports that aren't competitively focused, but these ones, the production value is just so high in the interview and like just the way the presenters like Nick like interact with the camera and like talk to the audience and explain their. I watch them. I'm like, I don't typically watch, but I'll watch these. They're just really fun to watch. And they're very charismatic people that are playing the game. And of course, then there's the animated series. So I thought, I was thinking about while you were saying that point, I was like, that's absolutely true. Like I haven't watched Netflix in weeks, but whereas like every Wednesday, I'm like refresh, install like on my computer, cancel meeting, refresh, go watch this. So I get it. Also, as an aside, I just want to point out something funny when you're going on like, oh, I paid for all these channels and whatever else, but we all know what I really want is the sport. And I was like, home and guard. Oh yeah, sports.
That's right.
Home and garden. No, totally sports guy.
The other thing that has come up about it a lot on social media is, and look, I don't have any inside information here, but the people need to seek out clarity before they start spreading crap. We had this conversation last time, but there's a lot of stuff about shutting down content creators. GW stepping in and being this big ogre and shutting down content creators. It's interesting because I think they are exercising their right to, own their IP in some places. But there was all this thing, when Astartes was out there and Richard Boylan's amazing creation around Armageddon was out there, and people like, come on, GW, bring these people on board, pay them for their amazing work. You got to do it. And then they went, actually, that's a great idea, and they did it. And then all the same people stood up and went, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, you get that like shocked Pikachu meme.
We didn't expect you to listen to us. So they've done it, and they've got these amazing content creators who are actually now doing the work for GW officially and getting reimbursed for it, I'm assuming, officially. And there are some other people who maybe have been asked to, I don't know. I don't know that I've heard of anyone firsthand who's been told cease and desist by GW. There are some rumors about people getting shut down. But then you've still got painting tutorials. You've still got people doing battle reports. It's not like they've gone to Tabletop Tactics and said, you guys have got to stop. This is because that all adds to the brand for them. I mean, people, if anything, they're feeding them the codexes, right? They're feeding them the information and giving them the models, so that they can build the brand. There are some people maybe that have crossed a line and have abused the IP who have been told to stop it.
So
I mean,
just recently this week, there was an example of something like that, an example of GW being too heavy-handed, maybe in protecting their IP. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Guy from my Midwinter Minis. He's really great. He does all these little videos, painting videos. He's got a great voice. I really enjoy watching his stuff. And he did a review of Warhammer Plus, which is the very topic we're talking about. And in his review on YouTube, he used clips from the contents of Warhammer Plus, but just very short, few seconds. It was on his laptop, and he was filming the laptop. It wasn't like ripping anyone off. It was all perfectly fine, covered by fair use. It's a review after all, and he got his video copyright struck by someone at GW, and it was a manual strike. At first, people thought it was a bot that got awry, overzealous, but someone at GW did copyright strike his video. But very quickly, someone else at GW realized that was a mistake and they should not have done that. And they reached out to him and undid the strike and apologized. And in that 24-hour period in between the strike and the resolution of the whole thing, there was quite a bit of online outrage, deservedly so, by the way, at GW, thinking, what are they thinking, trying to shut this guy down? He's a great ambassador for the game. He gives them free publicity. All true. But someone at GW did get overzealous and issued a strike on that review. So I think there are people at GW who are pushing the protection of the IP maybe a little bit too far. Right. And it's something that the community must call out when they see it. But let's remember that they own the IP, and if they don't protect it, someone will take it away from them, right? So it's a complicated topic, and not one that I really feel competent in really weighing in.
I think that's one of my biggest criticisms of this whole discussion. Almost nobody that's complaining about it, I would imagine, have the expertise to really weigh in on intellectual property rights and where GW is overstepping. To me, it seems kind of simple. If you're posting on YouTube and you're monetizing a video, or even if you're not monetizing a video, and it involves or intersects with Warhammer intellectual property, like stories, characters, worlds, or whatever else, there's always a risk that they're going to come knocking and say you have to take that down. And for whatever reason, it doesn't matter, in my opinion. It's their property. If you start animating Space Marines fighting Tau, and then you have Grimaldus showing up and saying, hey, I'm doing this, giving people the impression that this is maybe canon, and Grimaldus starts a love relationship with an Eldari, whatever, I mean, GW is gonna be like, no, we kind of don't want that floating around because that doesn't interact well with our fictional universe we've built. So I mean, it just, to me, people shouldn't be that shocked. And look, I can't comment on the Midwinter Minis thing. I didn't really follow that. Maybe somebody got a little overzealous, and I mean, that happens. GW is a huge organization. Obviously, they seem to have reached out to him, according to you, and tried to bury the hatchet on that and apologize. Mistakes can happen, and I don't know, seems to be an example of, if GW oversteps, they're willing to walk that back. I don't know.
That's a really common thing that happens, though, and I can, just to give you a media background, I've been working in media and radio and television for 30 years, and this kind of thing happens all the time. The Olympics is a great example. That was really recently. Before the Olympics started, we in the media were given a list because of sponsors of the Olympics and because of the Olympic brand and how careful they want to be with it. We were given a very long and very legalese list of things we can and cannot say on the radio about the Olympics. There are literally phrases you are not allowed to use in case it gives the impression that you are in any way affiliated with the Olympic organization or the event itself. So that we weren't allowed to talk about certain things. You're in no way allowed to use any audio or video of any Olympic event in your radio show or in your television show unless it's sanctioned, unless you're officially part of it. There are so many rules around it. And at GW, it's really easy to imagine that somebody somewhere in a room was given a checklist. Look, keep an eye out for these things. Boom, 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 boom. And that one of these people saw the Midwinter Minis thing and went, holy crap, my checklist. Oh my God, these are all these things. Shut it down. And then later on someone maybe a little higher up the food chain was able to go, yeah, that's not reasonable.
Yeah, and that happens in any
damage.
organization, right? You have your intern or your student, and you tell them like, hey, here is your left and right. This is what you're supposed to do, and they go off and they go do something crazy, and you're like, oh well, actually, like, yeah, technically I said you shouldn't do that, but let's be honest, we can let that one slide. I mean, like, it's just.
I think we've all worked with that person before.
I mean, we've all had students, they overachieve, and it just seems like so many complaints that come from people that maybe have no experience of working for a living.
But this is a classic. We have this happened relatively recently. Again, intern situation. We give out prizes, but because postage is expensive, we say to people, look, when you win a prize on our radio show, can you pop in and collect it? And we had this prize sitting at our reception area, and I got this email from a lady saying, your people have said to me that you refusing to post it. It's the policy, company policy, no postage. But I live like 3 hours drive away, and I'm in a wheelchair, and I just can't get in. And the only way for me to do it would be to get a friend of mine who goes in like in a month to pick it up for me. And I was like,
I think we can post this.
Obviously, we're going to post that. Obviously, it's not even a. But because the company policy is no postage, she was originally told that ain't happening. So look, I know it's a roundabout way of getting to the point, but the other great thing is with the internet, there is a lot of outrage, and then when a reasonable solution is reached, there's no comment anywhere about it. So we had in New Zealand recently, we had this COVID thing, right? We had one case of Delta in the country. One case in the community with no connection to the border was tested positive, and our Prime Minister and our health boffins said, we're shutting down. That's it. And that got headlines around the world. People like, New Zealand is crazy.
They're out of control over there.
Out of control. Police state. And just we shut it down because of one case. Well, 2 weeks later, we're reopening the country because we managed to get it under control. But there are no headlines around that. It's you get this outrage because this extreme thing happens. And then when a reasonable solution is reached, nothing. So, I think Facebook is a minority speaking loudly. We're all being really nice and reasonable about it, and no one's going to give a shit.
That's right. It's outrage culture. Honestly, I feel like we've moved into this part of Warhammer media that there's this like segment of YouTube or like media personalities or whatever that like just feed off of this like community outrage, and then like that's how they just get views, and they're like kind of the Fox News of Warhammer, and so they just kind of like feed into that, and that's how they get views.
Nick just made a lot of our listeners in the United States angry with that comment.
Oh no. And they're gonna go back to watch Fox News and then continue calling COVID a hoax, and they'll take their ivermectin and
I had a really valid point I wanted to make, but I can't remember what it was.
I just completely shocked you with the complete unfiltered nonsense I spew.
That's it. The headlines tomorrow: CanHammer host throws down challenge to Fox News.
Yeah, exactly.
David versus Goliath. CanHammer versus Fox.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
We're in the same league for sure.
They should feel threatened. We're gonna get a cease and desist letter, like a team of lawyers show up to my house. Yeah.
Actually, do you know what? I just remember what it was. The other thing is we got to cut people some slack when something's new, right? There'll be teething problems. There'll be things that happen as they figure it out, as they get along. I don't know many people that have started something new, even this hobby. Let's go back to our original topic. I made a big mistake in selling my Black Templars. That's something I regret. I feel like with the wisdom of a few years now, I wouldn't make the same mistake again. When something's brand new, you're going to stuff it up. You're going to make mistakes. We got to give people a bit of space for some teething problems. Or is that too reasonable?
Well, it's too reasonable for the internet.
Ooh, Steve, back to you. Is that too reasonable?
Screw him. Get rid of him.
That's right. No, I mean, we'll run the risk of being just called GW shills. Like, let's be reasonable at this. Oh, you're just a GW shill. Expletive. Yeah. Whatever else.
That is why I never read the comments on our YouTube videos. All right. On that note, I think this was a really nice, fruitful conversation we had. We've been talking for over an hour now, and we try and keep the episodes to about an hour. And also, I'm sure that Steve has something to do with his afternoon.
Well, you know what's funny is my wife tried to call me the second we started. The second we started, she rang, and I was like, I'll call you back soon. I'm just busy. So yeah, I better get on with that.
Yeah. We're gonna have to cut our
talking
72-hour stream short. Then we're about 71 hours short of our 72-hour stream marathon.
Your very important Canadian friends needed you more than she did.
Yeah, exactly.
Facts are facts. Warhammer, I love you.
Well, as usual, always a pleasure chatting with you, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from the future.
Yeah.
Thank you. I always have a lot of fun. Really appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Nick, always a pleasure. We'll see each other on Sunday, and if we play, I will crush you.
Oh, you think so, eh? Well, you didn't bring your Grey Knights. And can you remind the audience what happened the last time we played? It was Death Guard versus Drukhari.
I don't believe we have played in months now.
That
never happened.
Like last month, a tabling? I think I see a tabling somewhere.
I think I
100 to 25.
I called mercy and gave up before you could table me. But that was not a good game for me. No, indeed. But that's okay because you're not playing Death Guard. You're playing your 1,000 Suns, and like I said, I will crush you.
I'll just warp time my screens right outside of character line
exactly.
of
so you keep doing that,
range.
And we're
exactly.
gonna do great. All right. I'll thank you everyone for listening. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch,
socials.
Discord, socials. If you're listening to us on any podcasting app, in the episode description, I should have put links to all of that good stuff, so you can go find us on there. And we'll catch you very soon. Have a good night.